Well, I'll make quite a few references to what you were just saying, and I hope you haven't preempted too much of my presentation. And I've entitled where Europe is, as you see it in white. The name of the conference. Ah, by the way, how many people have heard about the Future of Europe conference? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. Wow. That's what I'm here for. To explain you of something of really potentially fundamental importance for Europe and European citizens. In that context, I'll be talking about the citizens' assemblies. Europe and the world, look, we have a problem. You may name those problems as you want. We have catastrophic risks, we have existential risks, anthropogenic, man-made, and so on. But all those risks, if you think about them, they essentially can be only sorted out if we have the right sort of democracy. Because it's we, the people, through cooperation, can sort out our problems. And democracy is an endemic crisis, I say. I would call it, we have structural cracks in democracy. Wherever in Europe, and this is only a short list of the mega problems, we need somehow to untangle those cracks that have brought democracy to its knees. We may say that in order to sort out democracy, we'd start with values. And we all agree and we all love at least these three top values: freedom, justice, and of course, equal representation. But how often we forget that there is no free lunch in the universe. If you want something, you have to pay for it. So if you have rights, you need responsibilities. But these essentially put a kind of a straitjacket on our freedoms. Freedoms cannot be absolute, and they were never absolute. And there were times, like during the Second World War, that many civil freedoms were severely restricted. Why? Because there is a top value over all those three. And which one is that? Anybody volunteers? Yeah, close. It's right. So, values underpin human rights, about which we are talking so much about. And likewise, they do not come free because they come with their responsibilities. And what we have missed here, we so rarely talk about responsibilities. Only now, in the context of the climate change, we are talking about this, that the environment is not for free. You have the right to use the environment, but we are also responsible for its maintenance, right? So that the future generations are not deprived of the same privileges we have. So that's why we need essentially a new definition of the universal values of humanities, which would also embrace the responsibilities. So that's my second point. The third one is that the cornerstone of democracy, as we've been told by the fathers of liberal democracy, is that it means creating greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Right? Where's the problem here? It's a mega problem, and Brendan, you have mentioned that. Look, this is the minority. Where is the minority? Democracy can be a tyranny of the majority, and that's what Alexis de Tocqueville said in the 19th century. But essentially, he repeated what Aristotle said 2,400 years ago in the context of the Athenian democracy. So the problem is not new. And we have somehow to sort it out. That's, among others, why we have populism. If you think about Brexit, this is absolute scandal that so little has been taken account of those 48% that voted to remain. So we need a consensus politics. And the question is, how do we bring it about? Can we rely on our politicians? Forget it. Turkeys do not vote for Christmas. So the only hope, in my belief, is that the reform of politics happens bottom up. We are talking about a civil, unified action that will essentially force the politician to truly act in the interest of those who are governed by them. So that's what is at the core of citizens' assembly. A fairly new idea, but what we are doing, we are unraveling something or repeating something that was the basis of the African democracy 2,500 years ago, for over 100 years, where the people were drawn by lot from 300,000 people around Athens. 50,000 had the rights to vote, and 5,000 showed up on average for taking part in those assemblies. So how do the current assemblies work? They are called to debate a single major issue, although they can be put as the second chamber of the parliament. And in my two previous books, I write very extensively on that, how this could happen. But this is a separate chapter. All the citizens or delegates to the assembly are selected randomly from the electoral roll, like a jury service. Jury service is nothing else as the continuation of what the Romans and the Roman magistrates had instilled. If you, for instance, wanted a citizen, and Brendan mentioned Labour Party, say Labour Party wins next time, in 5 years' time, right? They have a golden opportunity, assuming that they want to go back to Europe, to do a citizens' assembly on returning to Europe, like a constitutional convention, say 300 people, taking into account that we have almost 7 billion inhabitants. That tell us, what do you want? It would have been a fantastic idea if Mr. Cameron had thought about it. We would have never had Brexit. Because one thing in the assemblies is that emotions play much less significant role than the reason. And when you debate facts, you have to agree, okay, sorry, I didn't think of it. Because you are going through the learning process with experts and through self-study, and then you deliberate and confront your ideas with the ideas of your friendly delegates, hopefully, and you are supported in that by experts. And finally, there is a decision-making process where the minority views are always heard and taken into account. So where did we have those assemblies? The most important one was in Ireland in 2012-2014. There were 100 delegates, the Republic of Ireland, selected to revamp the Irish constitution, especially the equal marriage, gay rights, and abortion. And what they achieved is just unbelievable. Look how Ireland has changed in just a few years. And that's the people's power, that's the power of the assemblies. We had a similar attempt by UCL, the constitutional unit at UCL that I frequently attend. They organized a post-Brexit assembly. I wonder if you've heard about that, for 2 weekends, right? And the result was roughly that we shouldn't leave the EU, or we should be in the single market and customs union, which effectively more or less the same. Well, I have to rush. So citizens' assemblies are now going to be applied for the Future of Europe conference. What is it? Now the date is 27th November 2019, symbolic, EU 27. Macron and America get together and issue a 2-page memorandum calling for the Future of Europe conference. That leads to European Council meeting on the day that we had election, on the 12th of December. It's all symbolic. where they rubber stamp, okay, we go ahead, but blah, 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 as usual in the Union. The amazing thing is that in the memorandum, the date when the conference was supposed to start was the 1st of January. They even named the president of that conference. You know who? Verhofstadt, the key federalist. And that was probably too much because the European Union, the Council of Europe, was putting a stronger position, and the ambassadors made and then said, yes, in principle, blah, blah. Nothing happened. So, what is now happening, that the European Parliament took it over and is the key driving force. And the European Parliament, in a kind of coalition with the European Commission, agreed to start the date on the May 9th, which is the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. So what is needed now is across-European citizen support, because the citizens' assemblies are to be a key model to break the mold. And that is obviously what Macron's idea is, and why I believe that the European Parliament is so strongly for it, is that in the European Parliament you've got a big army of Macronists who are trying to reshape the Union. So if they can't do it through the European Council, they try to do it through the Parliament. And you think about the budget, the fight that has just started, where the European Parliament said 1.3 GDP, and the European Council said not even 1.1. But it's the European Parliament that has to rubber stamp it, not the European Council. It's a super crisis. And I think this is another area where we see the power struggle between the European Council and the Parliament. Because who really rules Europe? We are really, really entering a fantastic era of change in Europe. We don't know where it will go. I'm very, very positive. I don't share your pessimism, Brian. Although you said that in 5 years we will be back. But I'm more concerned about the changes in Europe, and I think we really, really have a chance to do something positive. So let me go on. This is the European Parliament formal proposal from the 22nd of January, that there will be a conference plenary of 250 to 300 members, and 3 of those members will come from the European Commission, 27 from the European Council, 135 from the European Parliament, about 100 from national parliaments. So national MPs will also be members, randomly selected by the way, to the conference plenary. 4 members from the EU Social Partners, Employees and Employers, 8 from the European Committee and for Regions, and there will be those citizens' assemblies, roughly 300 members each, and there will be, at the moment, 6 of them. They are called, I will come to that. But the only problem that we have now, that these assemblies can only make proposals and suggestions. Essentially, they drive it, but they have no formal legal say, and that's where the protest vote may change the situation. Let's see. The European Parliament proposal essentially is about doing it bottom up, right? Starting with those 6 themes of the same European institution, economy, security, defense, and then going to what they call not citizens' assemblies, but agoras, referring to the original Athenian democracy, having also the youth agora. And those agoras will deliver suggestions and feedback to the conference plenary, who ultimately will make decisions and commitments. And the assumption is that once those decisions and commitments have been made, the European Council, which is the highest legal body, decisions in the countries will only rubber stamp it. There won't be any more referendum and so on. But this is hopefully, it's all playing out. We don't know how it will finish. Now, 24th of February in Milan, there was a conference of 45 NGOs focusing on democracy. And it was initiated essentially by the person who should be present here, Roger Cassar, who is the chairman of the New European Movement, who is also the co-organizer of this conference, of this workshop. Now, what happened is that the European Parliament changed it in the meantime, the citizens' assemblies to Agora. If you read this European Future Fringe, in my view, it's not perhaps too late, it's not a very nice name to propagate. So what I suggest, originally, the Citizens' Assembly wasn't in Agora, it was in Nix. I was there 3 or 4 years ago. Agora, which is a public space, meeting space, which is around the market. When the sessions were taking part there were huge crowds debating what they were talking about. And there were no microphones and so on, they were just freely moving. So the fringe is around that, yes. Paul, change the name to EuroAgora. Can be remembered and pronounced easily in any European language. EuroAgora reflects the European-wide and not just national content, and represents exactly the ancient tradition. So the European Parliament, the European citizens must keep the pressure on politicians. I think the momentum has to be kept up. My final slide. What is the European Fringe or EuroAgora about then? First of all, it's similar, as Brendan mentioned, to the Edinburgh Fringe framed around the fees. It is parallel to the events, the official program explaining the process of citizens' assemblies, providing ideas to the thematic agoras, promoting attentive listening to both sides of arguments and reach the consensus, and engaging all European. I mentioned why it is in white, because there is a scope to get Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, Britain, Ukraine, the Balkans into the process. And that's why your caravan has such an important meaning. And that's why culture and art mixed with serious politics makes a lot of sense. But on that subject, who is better to hear from than from Miha Pogačnik? Thank you.